we kick off today's episode, I got something that could save you a ton of time this season. If you're a grassroots coach trying to juggle work, life, and soccer, Soccer Coach Weekly is an absolute game changer. Since 2006, they have been trusted by coaches from all over the world, delivering fun, ready-to-go drills that keep players focused, learning, and loving the game, even when you're short on time. And here's the best part. Chat by the Pitch listeners get 50% off a full year of premium access. Just click the link in show notes and use the promo code Ian50 at checkout. That's Ian50 for half off. Plan fast, coach smart, Soccer Coach Weekly.
I want to tell you about something I've used and I truly believe in. Replayer. It's a sideline camera built for youth sports. Just set it up, hit record, and it captures the entire game automatically. No chasing the ball, no holding your phone, just hands-free, stress-free recording. The in-game tagging is one of my favorite features. One tap, and you can mark a big goal, ankle-breaking moves, or a clutch tackle. Then pull those clips for later for review, highlights, or social media. And the live streaming's next level. A buddy of mine actually watched his son's game while flying cross-country at 30,000 feet. That blew me away. If you're a parent or coach at the field every weekend, Replayer is a game changer. Head to replayer.com. That's REEPLAYER.com, and I think you'll be amazed. Hey soccer friends, I just want to give a shout out to our partner, Team Player. They are changing the game on how you find the perfect soccer team for your player. Parents, this means no more endless social media scrolling to find information on teams. With Team Player, everything you need to know is just a few clicks away. It's simple, straightforward, and lets you find the best coach and team for your player without any of the usual headaches. And coaches, we all know how tough it can be to get your team noticed, but when you subscribe to one of Team Player's team plans, you instantly get access to set up an online team profile that allows you to reach more potential players and showcase what your team is all about. It's super easy and lets players and parents see why your team could be the right fit for them. And if you sign up using the promo code PITCH, you can try any team plan free for 1 month. So whether you're managing a team or searching for one, come on over to www.teamplayer.us. That is TEAMPLAYR.US. And come give Team Player a look. Family-owned Soccer Innovation is your go-to source for top quality equipment. Whether you're a player, a supportive family member, or a dedicated coach, they have everything you need to elevate your game. For players, their innovative equipment are designed to boost your skills and performance on the pitch. From their agility cones to their portable goals, they have you covered. And family members, they offer durable equipment that's built to last because we know your support is critical to your player. Coaches, trust me, they can provide the equipment you need to run effective training sessions and shape the next generation of soccer players. Visit Soccer Innovations at soccerinnovations.com to start elevating your game with them. And if you use the code PITCH, PITCH, you can receive up to 10% off your next order. Hello everyone, welcome back to Chat by the Pitch. This is Ian Babcock, your host. This week I have Tracey Leone from UNC, part 2. We sit down and talk more about her soccer journey and what she's doing in the world of soccer. I hope you all will enjoy it as much as I did doing the interview and re-listening to this interview multiple times now, and I hope you all truly enjoy it. So let's start this chat and head to the pitch. Because you said you came back to Texas and coached for a bit. Do you think, I'm assuming you're coaching academy age, U18 and younger players. Did you find that to be helpful, or did you find that just be still involved with the game? Because I can't imagine how hard it would have been to, I know coaching is not the same back then it is today. We talked about the progression of the changes. Okay, so going back, so you said you talked about coaching here, and
at the academy, I'm assuming it's what we would call the academy level today, 18 and younger. I don't know if you coached very littles, but did you feel like getting that type of playing was nice, or do you truly think stepping into the higher level coaching? Because talking to a lot of coaches, that's a lot of coaches want to be. They want to be at the collegiate level or part of that realm. How do you view that for yourself?
I loved, gosh, I loved just coaching whatever age kid I was coaching at the time. I started coaching more high school age. Like when I was playing, I was an assistant coach for a couple club teams that were high school age players. But I gave private lessons during that time as well. And my youngest kid was 8 years old, who I trained, who ended up going to UNC as well, which was really funny that later on. That's later in life. But I just loved soccer so much and I love kids. I got an education degree. I loved coaching at whatever level became available and I had the opportunity to be involved in. I loved coaching at soccer camp and just trying to make those teams and those players better. I just was really lucky. I just fell into the college game and it came at a time where there weren't many females in coaching. They were trying to increase the number of females in coaching. I was coming off my playing days with the national team. And so I had that going for me. And I just think I got really lucky and then just stayed in the college game for a long time. But I enjoyed all the coaching endeavors that I was able to be a part of, really, at whatever level. Sometimes I worked ODP camps as well as a coach. And sometimes I were given states like North Texas. I had North Texas on a few occasions, which was loaded with talent. And other times I had smaller states and I loved coaching them just the same. We were just working on different things at the time, but I loved coaching them just the same, and watching them grow throughout the week was really fun for me. So I was happy coaching whoever was on the field with me.
Love it. Now, getting ready for the 1991 national team, how was that for you? I can't imagine. I was talking to my 11-year-old son, like your soccer journey, and he goes, "There's no way you're interviewing this person." And he was just shocked. And how was that for you? As that's a huge moment in anyone's career, even making it to the national team, let alone I've interviewed one person, they said they made it, had their one cap and they were done. And for you, you had quite a few caps with the team. How was it playing in 1991 and getting to that phase of the dynasty that United States still has to a degree all these years later?
Yeah, it was a once in a lifetime experience for sure. I think it was neat because I think our team were kind of pioneers of it all. And we played, and this is what I mean. I think this were the purity of the sport for me, and just the timing of my playing days and when I grew up and then going into college and then going into coaching and playing for the national team and all those things was always at the beginning of everything. It's funny. I'm just realizing this as we're talking. I actually really love that. And I wouldn't trade it ever for the world. I think of these kids today and go, oh my God, I would have killed to play pro soccer. I would have died to play pro soccer, play every day. Are you kidding? And make that a livelihood I just wouldn't even have believed it. But growing up at the time that I did and experiencing all those things kind of at the beginning of soccer growing in North Texas, beginning of the ODP program, beginning of college sports, beginning of the national team, preserve that purity and that innocence of the sport for me. We were paid $15 a day for expenses. That's what we made. $15 a day that we would save for car payments because we all had jobs. We all had jobs outside of trying to play for the national team because, of course, that was not a livelihood. But it was just the pure honor of playing for your country. There was no ulterior motive. There was no bonus, no endorsements, no salaries, no nothing. Which a lot of people be like, oh my gosh, look at all these players. They can play for a living and really be set for life. And I said, man, that'd be amazing. But I tell you what, I will never trade when I was playing. because like I said, the purity was preserved, I think, in that way. And so the 91 World Cup was just like that. When I first got on the national team, women's soccer was not a World Cup sport. It wasn't in the Olympics. We just played for our country. All of a sudden, they announced that there was going to be a Women's World Cup. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're actually going to get to play in a World Cup during our time. And so that was just exciting. We were going in unfamiliar territory. We were playing a lot of countries. We honestly were losing a lot. We didn't start on top. We were knocked out of tournaments early. That's why we saw the Great Wall of China, because we got knocked out of a tournament early and went to the Great Wall. But with every year, we got better and better and grew from playing all these amazing countries, and ended up going into 1991, not as a favorite, but having the opportunity to see what we could do. And I remember about 3 months before we went to the World Cup, which was in China, we had gone to China several times because they were the only country that would host tournaments in the women's game at the time. So we went to China like 4 or 5 times when I was playing. And we went to China about 3 months before the World Cup, and Anson called it the getting reacquainted with China trip. And we said, we're acquainted with China. We don't have to go back. But we went, and I remember him having a team meeting at the end of the event. And I will never forget this. We're sitting in a banquet room, and he said, you guys have the opportunity to be the best in the world at what you do. Do you realize how few have the opportunity to be the best in the world at whatever it is? Musician, actress, lawyer, doctor, teacher, whatever field it might be. How few have the opportunity to be the best in the world at something, at anything. And you have that opportunity. And I remember it put in perspective the magnitude of what we were about to do, because of course, this was the first time through. We were the guinea pigs. I thought, wow, I haven't thought of it that way. The best in the world. So it was an amazing experience to go through qualifiers in Haiti. We learned so much about the world because when we went to Haiti, there were a lot of riots going on. There was a lot of political unrest in their country. There were times we couldn't even leave the hotel because it wasn't safe to leave the hotel. But we would go into the stadium, music blaring, trees that were overlooking the stadium had people in the trees. There were people in the trees to watch the games. And it was such an amazing experience to think about how soccer could bring people from all over the world together, and could give an opportunity for these people to forget what was going on in their country that was so difficult, to just enjoy a game of soccer. So it just really put in perspective. We got this really worldview, culturally, athletically, in every way, going through the time that we went with the national team. Just so many stories. But it was just an experience of a lifetime. And it was one of the greatest moments of experiences of my entire life, for sure. Outside of having my daughter, it was just one of the greatest experiences. And it shaped, not only was it just literally a dream come true, it shaped who we were so much and who we became as individuals, as it shaped the game as well for years to come. I never would trade when I was able to play, even though there weren't all these wonderful things that the game can provide today, because it was just so pure.
Now, I can't fathom playing at that high of a level ever. And then you went on not just playing it, you continued on this journey of coaching after that. So you retired from the national game and playing at 26, and you started down this journey of coaching. Looking back at that time frame, you ended up starting coaching where?
I was still playing. I was at Creighton University. And then in 1993, my husband and I accepted the job at Clemson to start the program there from scratch. We had no team. And we had a year which was so smart on their part to put this team together. It was another amazing experience. To me, like, those were some of the best coaching days I think I've ever experienced. The level, the kids, the players, the place, the opportunity, everything was phenomenal. And Clemson was smart. They hired a young female coming off of playing with the national team and a pretty accomplished player with my husband, who was an experienced collegiate coach, had been in the game for 5 or so years, had won collegiate national championships at the NAI level. So we were this perfect kind of combination for meeting gender equity, but for also building a program in the ACC. And our first game at Clemson was against UNC.
And how did that go for you?
It was interesting. So originally, our first game was not supposed to be against UNC. I had scheduled them over some later weekend, and Dino, the longtime assistant here that I played for when I was here, called me a few months after I had finished the schedule and said, "We need to schedule a game." And I said, "No, we've already scheduled it. It's blah, blah, blah." And he said, "No, can't play then. We either got to play you midweek or we got to play you the first game of the year." And my boss at Clemson had said, "Trace, you might want to play a team that maybe you can compete with your first game ever." I had scheduled a smaller school to play for our first game. So I said, "Dino, we didn't want to play him at home because we knew this was going to be a huge mountain to climb. Wanted to play him at Chapel Hill. I didn't want to play midweek because we were going to have to miss school. Our kids were going to be all freshmen. It was going to be more tiring, and it's going to cause some difficulties in future games." So I said, "Okay, I guess we're going to have to play the first game of the year," which my husband and I spoke about it, and we thought, you know what? This is probably the best time to play it. And so I went into my boss, who I thought was going to fire me before we were even going to start. And I said, "Okay, here's the deal. We're going to play North Carolina first. And this is why it's good. It's good because our players will see the gold standard. They will see the best team in the country, and they will learn right from the beginning where we're trying to get." And so he's like, "Okay, you still have a job." So we proceeded to lose to North Carolina 7-0 in our first game. But man, did our kids learn a lot. And 2 weeks later, we beat Vanderbilt, which was our first top 20 win. And I swear we would not have won that game had we not played North Carolina our first game. Because our team learned quick. Wow. Okay, this is the level.
I would call that the make it or break it stage in players dynamic, I guess. Even as a coach, I guess. I can't imagine the coach. I can only visualize the player side in my head. I guess they came through and was the hunger for fight out of that. So coming off that for your first season, the first so many years you coached, how was going through that? And how much were you able to lean on Anson and your husband's resources to, you guys have this, I'm assuming he has a rich history like yours, each other's history of coaches and players and other people you can reach out to. Was that something you were constantly doing as a coach, or were you two working on it as a couple and trying to do it on your own and not have to worry about leaning on people? Because I think it has its draws both directions.
Pretty much all the opportunities I ever received in soccer, I could point to Anson as being a huge reason why. And the Clemson job, huge reason why I was offered that job was because of Anson and having him as a reference and talking to my later boss at Clemson. Just everything in soccer, I can always point back to Anson as being really the most impactful person that I've ever had in my life through soccer. So many doors open because of him for me that I'll never be able to just share how grateful I am. Just nothing I can do or say will justify how much I appreciate everything he has done for me in a million different ways. I think once we got to Clemson, Ray and we had this blend. I'm a more rigid, structured person. He's a more creative person. We just complemented each other really well. I came from this North Carolina background and learned so much from Anson, and whether it be exercises, philosophy, different things from the Carolina program, which at the time was obviously the top. He had to work his way for 5 years as a young coach. We could blend all of that together. And so that's what we did. We couldn't run our Clemson program strictly like North Carolina runs their program because we weren't North Carolina. And I think that's probably the biggest mistake that people do make playing for someone so amazing like Anson, that this is such the ingredient for success. All the ingredients are there, but not every team is like that. So you have to pick and pull what's going to work for your group, what would be good to implement, and what is your team ready for, and what might you change for the group that you have. And I think that's where Ray was able to balance out what I had learned from Carolina with some new ideas. And so I think that helped me very much as a young coach to be able to work with someone with more experience and in the college game, from recruiting to scheduling to game management to player management, all of the things that you deal with. But of course, I had a great mentor in Anson that I could bring those ideas to. So I was very lucky to have just this really great blend of ideas from Anson and from him.
Now, going through your Clemson career, did you find, I think this is where you talked about it in the coaching culture podcast, and maybe I read it in something you said somewhere else, but you talked heavily about culture there, but there was something you mentioned, or I read somewhere, you're talking about creating your own identity. And this sent me down a huge rabbit hole after I listened to that podcast. So I started to look for things along that line that you talked about. And did you find that developing your own authentic coaching style, your own authentic self, and where did you find that moment of who you were as an individual, as a coach? Because I'm looking back, like you had your authentic personality of who you were as a player. You knew who you were. Okay, the trailblazing history that you've had. If you look at your coaching now, when did you find that authentic individual in yourself to go to this level? Is that when you started off, when you were in, I can't think of the first college from 91 time frame.
At Creighton.
Creighton. Did you start finding your authentic coaching voice, your own vision and identity then? Or did it start as a player? Because looking at this from a parent, I think I view this as the double-edged sword. I look at coaches now as, are they being them authentic selves and their authentic identity? Or like you said, you have to replicate, you can't replicate someone else's because it's not the same environment. It's not the same culture or environment to foster that culture.
It's funny when you coach after you come off playing, you rely on the coaches you've had. You rely on, and obviously the most recent, and I played for Anson for 10 years. So
right. It's ingrained in you.
Yeah, massive influence for me. And he helped build my ideas for the game tactically, and how you see the game, how you teach the game, how you motivate players. But I think in terms of finding your own identity, and this is where Ray really helped, I think coaching with someone that didn't come from the North Carolina program, that had all these other ideas. You could quickly merge what was great about North Carolina and some of the ideas there, because obviously there's so many successful things that can come from that program that you can implement as a coach, even though you're not Anson. No one is. There's only one. And there's only one North Carolina. Can you pull from that? But that's where Ray was this perfect balance for me to try and figure out our identity together as coaches. And the best answer I can give is I think it's just an evolution. I think I'm still finding that out. As the game changes, your identity grows with it. As you learn more and become a coach, and I told my daughter this. I said, when I taught her how to drive, I said, every 5 years, you're going to look back and go, God, I'm such a better driver than I was 5 years ago. Coaching is the same. It's amazing, the growth. And the irony is you can always grow no matter how long you've been in it. You still are making mistakes. You're still thinking, God, I should have done this differently. Or, okay, I handled this well. I got to remember that. Things that you haven't seen come up and you're like, wow, I haven't seen that before. That's crazy since you've been in the game for 30 years. So you just evolve with the game. And so I think it's a constant evolution to find your own identity. And sometimes that identity might circle around the players that you have a little bit. At Clemson, we had 2 junior college transfers, 1 sophomore transfer, and 22 freshmen, probably. How we might handle that group would be different than maybe a year later, when now we have some sophomores, and then the year later, now we have a more balanced team in our 3rd and 4th year at Clemson. We've been able to set our expectations, set our standards, raise our standards. So I just think it's an evolution to find your own identity. And the minute you do, the game changes. So now you have to change with it. So you're constantly adjusting it and you're constantly seeking it. I really do believe that. But I think it is important as you find that and as you grow with the game in your own identity to just stay true to what philosophy of the game that you have. And I've always said, I want to be a coach that never loses sight that the game is meant to be fun. As you're trying to achieve all of these things in the game as a team or help individuals achieve the goals that they have, you want it to be fun. You want the environment to be positive and organized and inspiring and competitive and a really positive learning environment. Like I always have thought of coaching as teaching in a different classroom. And so the best coaches to me are teachers of the game.
I have some of the best coaches I've ran across with my kids. Some of them are some really great teachers in school districts. And I look back growing up to sports, and that's the only thing I can relate it to is because I never went beyond high school sports. The great high school coaches that I had or that I got to be around were phenomenal teachers because they could explain things and break it down. The great educators. I have to wholeheartedly agree with you there.
You have to teach. Anybody can roll the ball out and just play. You want to be able to teach so that these kids develop. And as players through all of that, they're developing as people as well. I think that's something that Anson that was his art form. He was able to develop players, but it was always along the lines of developing character and developing a family, developing values and core values that you could live by in your normal everyday life that you learned from playing soccer at North Carolina. Like everything he did translated into your life. It wasn't just about learning about soccer and the timing of your run or the quality of your run or how to play in a 4-3-3 as opposed to a 4-4-2 or whatever tactical idea, which we certainly learned exponentially. It was more about, it always went down to your character and your values. And what are you going to bring to this team, this program, and to your life after you're done with soccer or after you're done with college? And I remember him always saying, this was something, I think I said this in the other podcast, but he always would mention carrying your teammates. I've said this many times to my teams, hundreds of times probably. And this is exact words from Anson. And he said, you're going to carry your teammate one day who's struggling because the next day she's going to carry you. And I love the verb carry, because I imagine them getting on your back and you actually carrying them. And I think it's a great verb that you're literally going to carry them one day. You're going to play the game with them on your back because they're struggling. And then another day you're going to be struggling and she's going to carry you. And how many times I've told my teams that, I can't even count. And I just always will remember that and remember that, just that metaphor and that visual till the day I die, because it's something I learned from North Carolina.
All right, a quick break. This one's for my fellow grassroots coaches. We all know how tough it is to keep every kid engaged and still running a great session when time is tight. That's why I'm excited to partner with Soccer Coach Weekly. Since 2006, they've helped over 50,000 coaches, parents, teachers from all over the world. And here's the best part. As a Chat by the Pitch listener, you can get 50% off a full year of premium access. Just click the link in the show notes and apply the code EN50. And again, that's EN50 for 50% off. Plan fast, coach smart, Soccer Coach Week.
That being said, as you progress, so you coached at Clemson, and then you ended up coaching with the U.S. national team eventually after Clemson, correct? Am I remembering this right?
Yeah, I was weaving in and out with the youth national teams, the under 20, the under 21s, and then the under 19s. I went full time with U.S. Soccer. We went to the Olympics. We went with the women for a year, and then I got back into college. So I was weaving international soccer in between my college stints.
Now, do you view, talked about it, and I'd love to hear more about your authentic self that you've created, because I feel like you are a mold of many voices around you, many coaches. You had Anson there for, you said 10 years, but obviously you found your voice because you've always have been part of a successful program, either playing or coaching. How do you, I think how to phrase this, parents listening in or coaches listening in, how do you figure out how to be your authentic self? Because there's all these other pressures that you have to put up with as a coach. And parents don't see it until they're part of your program. Players don't see it until they're part of your program. And at the end of the day, obviously you have this authentic voice. When did you realize that voice was as powerful as, you may not see it, but reading your history and listening to you talk, you have this authentic self that I think parents, I think this is where a lot of my motivation has been, is that you do have this authentic voice of who you are and who you want to be and the direction you want to go. And you don't stop. Like you said, and you said to your daughter that if you're 5 years from about the driving, it's you're going to be a better driver in 5 years. You said same thing with coaching. And that to me is the evolving of a coach that has a self-belief. And you as the individual now are this amazing coach and have these values. When did that all start to click for you and help you progress to where you're at today?
I think for me, and everybody's built a little bit differently, I think I was, again, very, very blessed to, one, have the greatest bosses in the world, and two, to have the greatest coaches around me to coach with. And I remember at Northeastern, I hired Lindsay Massengale, who played for us at Clemson. And Ashley Phillips was another assistant. And then when Lindsay left, Kia McNeil was. They all played for me at some point. Lindsay did in college. The other two played on the youth national team with me. So that's how I knew them all. But they all went and played pro soccer for all these different coaches. And I told them, I said, this is awesome, because now Lindsay played for me at Clemson, but then she went on to play for 2 or 3 different pro coaches. So now she's going to come bring all those ideas to our program, and we can incorporate all of those things, and I can learn from her. And same with Kia. She played overseas. She played pro soccer domestically. So she played for all these different minds that now she can bring to our program that our team can learn, but I can learn from too. You hear the quote all the time, it takes a village, and it does. The influences that you have around you, when your kid gets to middle school, you want them to pick the greatest friends because you know they're going to be spending more time with their friends than they are with you eventually in high school. And their friends become very important influences in their life socially, in terms of decision making and responsibility and all these things. And I think coaching is very much the same. Surround yourself with the best people and coaches that you can find, that you can learn from. Because if you ever feel that you've learned and you've arrived and you've learned everything there is to learn, that's the time you need to retire, because that will never happen in coaching. We'll always learn more. So I think for me, I just was so lucky to have had such great bosses when I was a young coach. I relied on my bosses to help me navigate the college game or the international game when I was with the national team. And then I worked with the greatest coaches. So as I was hopefully impacting and coaching the players I was having, I was also learning every single day from the people I was working with. I think the authentic self, I think for me, it was always like, and this is where I knew getting into college coaching, Anson's one of my favorite people in the whole world. I love him to pieces, but I am not Anson. And I knew that. And so I needed to coach to my personality. It doesn't mean that we can't get to the same place, just our routes might be different because I'm not him. So I think it's more about, as a young coach, I was just trying to have my personality out there. I think I relied on the simple things like passion and energy, because as a player, that's what I brought. And so naturally, as a young coach, that's what you bring. It's what you brought as a player. You rely on your playing days a lot, I think, as a young coach. And then as you grow, you start to evolve all those ideas, and you start to figure out who you are as a coach. Like I said, I think through playing, that was the basis of my authentic self that I was going to bring to the table. And then I was going to evolve that throughout my experiences with the people that were around me.
Describe it. Because I'm listening and I'm just sitting here in awe, because you talked about, I don't know how to describe it. I'm looking at it as like you are one of these people that have been lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time through your career. But you mentioned something. I hate to keep on going back to the interview, because in my head, it stung, because I wish I could be more like you. You were talking about calling your mom and saying that you were not starting, or I can't remember the exact details. I'd have to, but someone was ahead of you playing, and you were realizing that, what's the word that you use? Something along the lines of realizing that knowing your capabilities and knowing where your position is and your role, how has that helped you mentor younger players to understand? Because I think that's one of the hardest lessons to learn as adults and in your job as players on a team, is being humble enough to know where you stand. And I felt like when you talked about you as a player in that interview, and if anyone's listening to this, everyone should go listen to that interview, because to me, it moved me, because I don't feel like enough of us in our society understands that. And I feel like just listening to you now, like you understood where you needed to be to do the right thing, to live by and do the right things you needed to do. So how did you come to that term? Because I'm assuming that plays a huge role in part of being your authentic self, part of being this great coach from people that I have had a few conversations with. How has that influenced you now, starting at a younger age? Because you were young when you learned that lesson. And
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
has it moved you now to also help the next generation of players and coaches?
I think probably the word is self-awareness.
Yes, that was the word. I couldn't think of it.
Yeah, and it is. Vincent talks about this all the time that players struggle to be self aware. And part of that is a parent's influence on that as well. Parents building up their child, building up their child, building up their child, certainly all in the eyes of love, but maybe the parent not being self aware of where their child fits. And that can add really unfair pressure to the player. And I've seen it happen. I think this 30 plus years of coaching, my husband and I always said we had the greatest lessons in parenting because we saw parents interact with their children. And most, I would say 95%, 90 to 95% of the parents that we engage with were, gosh, they're just the greatest parents. And we're like, gosh, we would love to have that relationship with our daughter, be parents like them. But we did have the 5 to 10% that we learned a lot, maybe in ways that we didn't want to replicate. And I remember the story at Arizona State. We had a player who was the nicest kid, great student. She was like an all-state high school player in Arizona, very kind of highly touted in the state. And when she came to college, she was not at the level to be playing and be contributing on the field for Division I college where we were, the level that we were at. She wasn't at the level. She came to practice every day. She worked so hard. And her parents were really hard on her, asking her to come in all the time and talk to us as coaches. Why isn't she playing? And they were asking her constantly why she wasn't playing and this and that. And I think putting a lot of pressure on her that was a bit unfair. And what I remember talking to Ray about was, I think they're missing the boat. They should be so proud of their daughter and they should be complimenting her. You work so hard at practice. You're such an amazing teammate. I can tell all the things that you're contributing to that team, irregardless of playing time. Like, I thought the parents really missed the boat on that one. And it affected their daughter in a negative way. Like, it put this immense pressure on her that was really unfair. She knew where she stood. They had no idea. And I just thought they really missed out on a really incredible, teachable moment that they could have encouraged her about, complimented her on, built her self esteem on, and her self worth of all the things she was giving to our team. They only were concentrating on what she wasn't getting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we missed the boat. Parents missed the boat even at the youth age on that. I think more and more today.
I think self awareness, I think it's, we have such a competitive society. You're in high school and you're competing to get into a great college. You're competing for an athletic scholarship. You're competing for an academic scholarship. You're competing for an internship. You're competing for a job, right? You're constantly in this competitive cauldron of life, that you're constantly competing. And I think it's very hard for people to realize and to look in the mirror and really self-evaluate in the right way. There's many times I'll meet with a player and say, tell me what your best qualities are. And they'll have trouble answering me. And I'll say, okay, what do you need to improve in? Blah, blah, blah. But some can't name their best qualities. Then you've got players that are the reverse, right? They can name their best qualities, but they don't necessarily buy into that they can improve on certain things. To me, both are important. You have to know what you're strong in, and you have to know areas that you can improve. Period. That's just self-evaluating. If you want to accomplish goals and become better, you have to know where your starting point is, right? To know where you want to end up. And so I think people have a hard time admitting that they're not at a certain level as somebody else. That's where self-awareness comes in. And I think it's partly our society, and I think it's partly parents that are also not self-aware. And so they're raising their daughter to not be self-aware either. And so when they get to college and they're not self-aware, you're like, this is going to be challenging because we have to be honest. This is where you
Right.
fit. Every player will say, "Oh, I want you to tell me." But then when you tell them, they're usually not happy that you told because of what you said. So this is the real challenge of being a coach, is really trying to tell a player where they are, especially if it's not where they want to be, and trying to make them self-aware. For me, I knew exactly where I fit with the national team because of how I felt every day as a player. I knew I was a player that could be cut at any moment. I was not a Christine Lilly, a Mia Hamm, a Julie Foudy. I was not at that level. And I knew it because at practice every day, I felt it. Now, it doesn't mean I wasn't working hard. Didn't mean I wasn't as committed or whatever, or I had my good days, but I knew consistently I was not a Christine Lilly. And I could admit that.
I
So
think as a person looking in, it's you're being humbled, but at the same time being realistic. And I think we as parents for our players, for them to be successful, I think we have to take more of what you have there and be realistic where our players sit and understand where their talent level is. I'm just sitting here in awe. That's all I'm saying. It's amazing.
oh, and I think too, the weird thing is these are all everything we've talked about tonight is all interconnected. That's the irony of the whole thing. We talk about self-awareness and the effect of parenting. And of course, now having been a player, then when I had this single mother parent who raised us in a certain way and was strong-willed, coaches that were substituted as father figures for me that kind of helped me grow in so many ways. And then I became a coach, and then I became a parent, and I'd been around all these parents. It literally was like parenting class before I had a child. It was awesome because I was like, gosh, we've been around so many amazing parents that we would love to emulate, and a few that we learn from that maybe, okay, don't make this mistake. And with our daughter, we really, I think just, and it's funny, we got lucky. I think she came out of the womb good. So we were lucky because if she wouldn't have, I don't know what would have happened. I just feel like they're all interconnected. Talk about self-awareness. Parents have a role in that. Parents have a role in that. It's not just the coach. It's not just the player. Parents have a role in it too, to help their child be able to teach them to self-evaluate properly.
I think that's very hard. I recently read a book and it talks about parents loving their kids too much.
Yeah.
And we don't want to see our kids struggle and have pain. And as a parent, my kids have benefited from that, I would say. They have been very fortunate. And because my parents did love me, but I did a lot of chores as a kid just because I was the oldest boy at home. When my brother left home at 19, I was about 11. And it all
Yeah.
fell on my shoulders. And my dad was very much into the gender roles in the home. We all had to go do inside stuff, but the girls never had to go mow the yard or shovel snow, but we all had to go clean, vacuum inside the house just as much as they did. So and it's like, I have realized now where I have failed my kids, and it's being that self-aware. And it's, as I'm listening to you talk about it and realizing how much I need to work on this as a parent, I think sitting back and really enjoying the time versus not so much making their life a little bit more difficult, not so much as comfortable as they can have, might be the best way of putting it.
It's funny. Like, I remember when my daughter was going through the college process, and I was really struggling to figure out my role in it. So, like, at one point, because she's very independent, but this was her first time through. And I thought, all right, do I just be really hands off, or do
Right.
I say, okay, you need to have these schools at this time, and how involved do I get with this? Because this was our first and only time through it. And I remember struggling with it. And I didn't feel like I was doing a very good job of figuring out what I should be doing. And finally, she said, Mom, can we get a college advisor? And of course, we'd been in the college game, we'd been around admissions, right? We were relatively knowledgeable just through dealing with admissions through soccer. But of course, we weren't working solely in admissions. So and right when she said that, before she even got it out of her mouth, I was like, yes, that's going to be perfect, because it puts me in a supportive role more than, okay, what is my role? Do I put the hammer down? Do I hands off? What do I do? Guided by somebody she knows is experienced and respected and has experience in the exact field. And I could be supportive, just talking about it freely with no like having to put the hammer down. It was perfect.
Do you think that's because of that supportive role? Because I'm looking at this from the soccer side of the game and looking at it from that perspective. You as a coach, your job is to train them, build them. Then on match day, it is to be support. It's to be the cheerleader in that moment versus I always describe it as being a conductor for an orchestra. But the more I have paid more attention to the game as a parent, the coaches I feel like that are more successful are not the orchestras. They're the cheerleaders on the sideline because everything they have done leading up to that game day, and I could be completely wrong, it's just watching, leading up to that game day is dictated how they prepped for that day. And your job is just to reassure them and give them the support. And do you think what you just said, like you had that practice all these years of doing that with players, now as a parent, you get to do it?
Yeah, I do think, I think you have a great point. I think one of the greatest, I remember I had to talk about Anson at one of his retirement events. And I said, one of the greatest, Anson's done a billion great things, but he was really the first to believe in what women could actually do and how far someone can go when someone believes in them. You can't even explain. And so, as a coach, as a parent, you're trying to instill that self-belief. I remember even with private sessions, I started to get into private, like individual coaching individuals. And I thought, okay, what's my philosophy here? And I said, there's three things my job is when I look at every individual session I do. I want them to have fun, I want them to get better, and I want them to get more confident. Those were my three goals every single individual session that I did, because I believed, I saw my daughter had 3 different club coaches, and they all had this belief in her. And as a parent, sitting back and seeing what that did for my daughter was a great reminder for me as a coach about just believing in somebody. The challenge as a coach is now you want to instill that, but you have to make these decisions. You're deciding who's starting, you're deciding playing time, deciding who's traveling. And so the hardest part about coaching for me was when you have to make those decisions, players' belief in your self-belief can be altered. And I think that I have a hard time with, because I want players to know that I do believe in them, even if I don't start them or I don't play them as much as somebody else. That's the hardest part to me about coaching. If I had to put it in a nutshell, because your decision is telling them something. And the kids today, I think, with everything that's going on in the world and the different pressures, and COVID didn't help the situation either, with this isolation and all these things that we've all gone through up until this point. When someone doesn't play, what they're telling themselves is the coach doesn't believe in me.
This is where I have been very much as a parent stuck. And I have been very much researching, teaching self-worth to my son. My daughter has a lot of self-worth. She's 7, but he's getting to the age where things are quickly changing for him, and understanding that who he is. He's Landon, but he's also more than a soccer player. He's not just this
great little soccer player in my eyes, he's also Landon, this creative kid, and he's more than just this one portion of his life. I had a coach challenge me to think about, if you stripped away your kids' activities, who are they? And it's teaching them that when those activities are gone, they are so much more. And I think having some conversations with this coach, it had me take a step back, because here he is, a coach coaching U15 and older, U14 and older, and this is what he's teaching these kids, prepping them for college. And because my big question is, like, how do you handle players for injuries? Because a lot of players go through that. I'm just done. I've talked to several athletes now that have admitted, I'm injured. I'll never be able to play this game again, or I might never come back the same. Their worth is all wrapped up in that moment of the game, versus like I'm more than this person. I can be more than this activity, more than the sport, more than this club, whatever it may be. And they can build upon that. And to me, that's just, hearing you talk about it, nice to hear that's what they're being, or you're trying to do at the collegiate level. I don't think kids today get it because of all the pressure, and they lose their identity. I think that's half the problem with kids that don't make it going pro. They lose who they are, or they make it going pro and they make mistakes and they get cut, and all these other issues happen. But
Yeah.
we can sit here and talk all night, but I'm going to wrap this up with my last question for the night. And it's my favorite one. And because it's a two-pronged question, it can be, because you did play as a player and you do coach, who has been the greatest inspiration for you as a player? It can be anyone, and the same thing applies to a coach. I can guess who the coach on the coaching side, and the player side, but there has to be more than just those few people. But who has been the greatest influence on you, or greatest influences on you as a player?
Greatest influences on me as a player. Anson, for sure. Of course, he would be as a player and as a coach, for sure. He's had probably the most profound impact. He has had the most profound impact outside of my own family, bar none. Just in every which way. I could talk forever and ever about how he's impacted my life. My sister would be another. My sister as a player. I think she was always growing up, and to this day is like my hero. She let me tag along with her and all these older kids and played soccer, and just unconditional support from her. My sister, for sure. Another one that's influenced me really is both a player and as a coach is my best friend, April Heinrich, who I played with here at Carolina. It's funny, she was a big reason I went to North Carolina in the first place, because when I watched the team play, when I was on my visit, I said, who's number 2? She's the best player I've ever seen. And it was April. And little did I know that we would become best friends. Maid of honor in my wedding, coached with her with the national team. She hired me to coach the youth national team. She's had a huge impact on me as a player, but also as a coach. My husband has had a huge impact on me as a coach as well. I think even though we've coached together with teams and even apart in terms of different programs or different areas, he got me into coaching. He taught me so much as a young coach and still does to this day. So those are definitely huge influences for me in terms of like throughout my entire playing and really coaching life.
Hey everyone, I hope you all enjoyed this second part with Coach Tracey Leone and what she's doing for the game. She is a remarkable woman, has done so much. I don't need to retell you everything she did, but as a parent sitting here in Dallas, hearing what she has done, going back and researching everything she's been part of, it just blows my mind. And I was very fortunate enough to have her on my podcast to share her stories. I hope you take her words and hopefully help you to be better parents. If you're a player, be a better player. If you're a coach, to be a better coach. Soccer is a community sport. We all know someone. We all know we can help and where we can help and where our skill sets are. So that being said, take what she has and run with it. Her story is phenomenal, like I have said. I don't know what more to say than that. Hey everyone, if you guys have enjoyed this podcast, have enjoyed what I've been trying to do, the messages that I'm putting out there, please give me some ratings, some stars on all the podcast sites that you listen to this on. Give me a review, share this, share with others. The more I can make this grow, the more I can continue doing this. I'm really trying to make a difference in our soccer community. So I hope you guys have enjoyed all this. And until next time, I'll see you at the pitch.